Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I've got 10 thrift flips or DIYs for you, all with a Victorian flair. Project number one. This is gonna be a stretch. I have this, I guess it's a planter that I got from Hobby Lobby when they were 90% off. So it was super inexpensive. And I did something to one of their mugs that I'm going to do to this. So I am using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer. I really love this primer. I'm going to cover this with 2 coats. And I'm using a fan brush because I'm being really careful not to get any drips. And I want to make sure that I get thin coats. I'm going to put one coat on and then let it dry completely for a couple hours, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a second coat just with the primer. Just because that red is so bright, I want to make sure it's covered and that it sticks really well. And now I'm using Fusion's Raw Silk, which I absolutely love. The Fusion paint has a primer in it as well. And I'm going to go over the whole thing, and I'm being really careful not to apply too much paint because I'll get drips everywhere, and I don't want any drips. That's kind of why I'm using the fan brush. And this is only going to take one coat because I have the 2 coats of primer on there. But I didn't want to leave it that stark white. I wanted it a warmer color because I want this to look like a old antique crock when we're done. I'm going to make sure that I go on the very bottom, just on the edge there, and I wipe off any that I get on the very bottom there. And I also make sure that I don't get any on the inside, so someone could still use this as a planter, which I guess that's what it is, or they could use it for food, really. Anyway, that's what it looks like when it's all dry. And I'm sorry for my light flashing. I'm not even sure what that is. Might be my camera or it might be my light. But now what I'm doing is I'm going over this with 1 coat of the Pentart 2-part Crackle. And I'm being very careful not to get any drips there. It goes on a lot like the feel of Elmer's glue, and you can get drips with that, and you don't want to drag across it when it starts to dry because it'll kind of gum up. You want to wait for that to be completely dry. It's opaque when it goes on and completely clear when it's dry. And now I'm putting on part 2. And on part 2 of the Pentart 2-part Crackle, you have to make sure that you put enough product on, but not too much product to where you have drips. Because if you have drips, they will show later on. You let that dry completely, and then you will go on over it with some sort of medium, like I like to use antique paste. This is antique gold in Pentart, and the antique paste is different than antique wax. It has a thinner consistency, and it goes in those little cracks better. Here you see me using my heat gun. I always use my heat gun to dry part 2. I was going over a part that did not have very many cracks. If you have a situation where you don't have very many cracks on the 2-part Crackle, I would get your heat gun out, keep it moving, don't get too close, and it will produce more cracks. Definitely will do that. The back part did not have a lot of cracks, and I went ahead and used my heat gun, and it did produce cracks. Now I have heard people say that they don't get any crackle. Sometimes you just can't see it. It is so fine. And sometimes you may not get it. You may not have put enough of part 2 on or part 1. You can always try and put more part 2 on. Let it dry. And also you can use a heat source like a blow dryer or heat gun. Just keep that heat gun moving, otherwise it will bubble and it will produce more cracks. So after you put your antique paste on, and I always use a stencil brush to just really get in there and kind of go in a swirling motion, because it's kind of hard to get that antique paste in those little tiny cracks. And I got a little bit too much right there. It cracked a little bit more than I wanted it to in that section, but that's okay. It'll all add to the look. You cannot use a wipe to go over this. You have to use like a dry rag. Any water that touches your two-part crackle will ruin the finish and it'll gum it all up. So when you do the Pentart two-part fine crackle, you cannot use anything that is water-based after you put part 2 on. And that includes using a wipe. So I use a shop towel, and it does a really good job of getting that paste off of the top and allowing it to stay in all those little cracks. And I just love how it looks when it's done. And now what I do is I am using the Pentart varnish, and this is one that has a little bit of a tint to it. It's clear varnish. I love this stuff, and it does take a couple hours or really overnight to dry. It is solvent based. You must use solvent based product on it afterwards. You can't use water based. And this is it, guys. This is my little antique looking Victorian, I guess I'm going to call it a vase or vessel or whatever. I just put some little greenery in it, and I love how it looks. I know it's not everybody's jam, but I love how this looks. I love that two-part crackle look on these items. So if you have something like this or something in your home, it'd be a great way to incorporate it into a vignette. Let me know what you think. Projects number 2 through 9. I have several castings, and they are from vintage brooches, frames 1 and 2, biblots 1s or bibelot 1. And I am just looking in the Santa's Hollow, and also I cut out a piece on Christmas Joy. These are the transfers that came out this year. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the pieces that I think will fit inside of here. I'm trying to find transfers that I can cut to fit on these. And I'm just kind of tracing around them. And what I'm going to do is I am going to use that to gauge where I need to cut around them. So I'll be able to see on the back where I need to cut, and then I'll just go ahead and just cut around it, and then put my transfer down like you would any other transfer. Peel off the back, and it's not going to fit perfectly, but that's okay, because I can always patch it together. I can kind of paint around it. This one ended up being off because I just placed it in the wrong spot. I think I traced it right, but then I placed it in the wrong spot. If you get over where you need to be, it's not a big deal, because I'm going to be painting the trim on this, and when I do that, I'll just paint over the part that the transfer went over. And now what I'm going to do, because I have like kind of a blank spot at the bottom, I'm going to just cut out a little piece from the transfer, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on the very bottom and kind of patch that little hole. And I do that anywhere on all of them that I think that I have a patch that, you know, I need to make. And it's not a big deal to do that. And by the time we get done doing everything that we're going to do to this, we will not, you will not even notice it. So now I'm going to go on to some of the others, and I'm taking some more little pieces, and these little Santas, they fit on there perfectly, and the Santa's hollow, and they have that old Victorian look. I think a lot of the Santa's hollow and the Christmas Joy have very much that Victorian look to it. The old postcards, the typography that they used to have. So if you like that kind of very traditional Victorian look, these are very much like that. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and keep going on this, and just be adding some transfers and basically doing this to several of these. I'm going to keep going on this, and then adding a couple more until I run out of transfers, and then we're going to switch to decoupage paper. But so far I found several that will fit just perfect in there, and it covers the whole inside, so it's really a situation where I don't have to worry about filling in the background or anything like that. And as you can see, I just go over the edge, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because later on we're going to be putting in painting around this, and we can fill in any gaps or anything like that. And on this one, most of my issues don't come from me tracing it around. It's just when I place it in the wrong spot. And once you put it down it's pretty much stuck. So you have to kind of leave it where it is. Like, see, this one I should have moved over to the left more, but that's okay because later on I just fill in that gap. Save your little extra pieces that you cut out, and then you can patch those in there. And honestly, by the time we're done with this project, you will never ever notice that you patch them in there. And I burnish all these just with my finger, just because these are kind of concave and I want to make sure I get them down really good. So now what I'm doing on the few that I have left is I have this piece of decoupage paper that has the perfect sizes to fit in things like these little vintage brooches or the tiny little small ornaments or frames or anything like that. And this is rice paper, so I just took my water pen and went around it with my water pen, and then I kind of tear the rice paper. And the reason I do that is so that it has a frayed edge and it blends better. And I just gonna keep doing it till I get it to fit pretty much the way I want to. It does not have to be perfect, because when we go over this later, what we do to it will fill in any gaps. So it's not a big deal to have little gaps on the edges. You do not have to be perfect. This is actually extremely easy to do. Now, what I didn't tell you about all of these is that I had made these before, and I had used a Pentart 2-part Crackle, and I tried to use a water-based top coat on it, and it completely ruined it. So, the moral of the story is, on the Pentart Fine Line Crackle, you must use a solvent-based top coat. You cannot use anything water-based. So I'm going to try it again. And what I had done on these, when I did them before, is I just went ahead and painted over them with Raw Silk by Fusion. And I already have magnets attached to the back. So these are going to be little magnets that you can just stick on the refrigerator at Christmas time or wherever you put your magnets. And I just thought that'd be something a little different. Now, for sure, you could use this on a tree if you have a smaller tree that you want to decorate. Definitely, you could put a little bail on it. I use a little jewelry bails that I get on Amazon. You can get a huge amount for very, very low cost. And I use super glue just to attach them, and they stay on perfectly. But we're going to just make these into magnets because I already had them and I didn't want to waste them. So I just painted over my mistake. And I do that a lot, guys, and I definitely encourage you to do that. I don't give up on things, even if I have to start over. I'm very pleased with how these turned out when I get done. So something that maybe you would think to throw in the trash, I just go ahead and have remade them. So I'm going to do these other two, and I'm just going to tear out the rice paper, and I'm just using Paint Couture decoupage medium to put these on with, and I'm going to put them on with the decoupage medium and also go over them after I get them on. So after those are dry, I am going to go over these with a coat of Sweet Pickin' Satin top coat. It is a water-based top coat. And I'm going to go over it with one coat, and I'm going to let that dry completely, and then I'm going to go over it with one more coat. You could, at this point, completely not do anything else to this if you don't like a distressed look, but we are going to be adding a two-part crackle to that later, the Pentart Fine Line Crackle. So I am going to let that dry very well before I do that. But in the meantime, I am going to get my Pentart, my favorite gold pigment fix, and my metal pigment in the antique gold. You take the metal pigment and you add in the pigment fix and you mix it up. It can be a little tricky to mix up because it's very, very fine, and you really need to mix it to the consistency of metallic paint, really. You don't want to do it too thin. And then again, you don't want to do it too thick. You don't want to mix too much, because once you mix this up, it dries completely within a couple hours. Most of the time I put it in a little container with the top, and it dries slower, but you won't be able to use it after, kind of like milk paint. So you don't want to mix up too much and waste it. But look how amazingly beautiful it is. And I am going to go over all of this, all of these little castings, and I'm going to fill in any little spots that I need to. I'm not going to go all the way to the edge where that white is, because we're going to do something later that's going to fix that. This is only going to take one coat to do these, guys, and it's just absolutely beautiful. The most amazing metallic, and it comes in different colors. And we are back in stock on most all of them, including the fire gold. The fire gold is actually kind of a red, so I used that in my last video, and people really loved it. So anyway, this stuff's fantastic. It dries really quick. It adheres to anything, and it does not come off. So it's a great gold paint to use. Of course, you could use any type of metallic paint that you have, but I'm going to go over all of these castings with just one coat, and I have just a nice little artist brush, and I'm making sure that I get in all of the beautiful detail of all of these, and I'm just going to go one by one and go around them and just finish them all off. Now this is the piece that came from the Christmas Joy. It was the church. A lot of the pieces in that Christmas Joy remind me of antique postcards that I have. Anyway, I'm going to go around this and just complete it. And when I get done with all of these, they dry extremely quick. After that, what I do is I go over all of the backs, and it just takes one coat, and I cover the magnets. These are the magnets that are on these I put on with super glue, and they are not coming off. And that's why they had to be magnets. And also, what I did is I just did one full coat, and then after that, I just let them all dry completely for the next step. Okay, what I did is I took the antique paste, and that is in Antique Gold by Pentart, and I mixed it with a little bit of black to make it a little bit darker. And I just put some on my finger, and I went around all of these because I wanted to give it a little bit more of a vintage feel. Now, I will say that does dull the shine down a little bit, because the antique paste is not going to shine even after you shine it up as much as that beautiful gold, but it will in the spots that you didn't put the paste, so it'll be kind of like peeking through. And I go through and I buff it off really, really well. And that just adds like a little touch of gold or antique, kind of an antique gold to it, and gives it a kind of a more, I don't know, tarnished old vintage look. Is what I'm going for. And it kind of goes for the look that we're going to end up with in the end. So anyway, I make sure that I buff it really, really well after I put that on, and that does bring back a lot of the shine, so make sure you do that. And I'm not using a wet wipe, that is a dry wipe. I always keep my dry wet wipes, you know, that I haven't used, that I left out for some reason, and they work really, really good for buffing. So you can see it's kind of dark. So now what I'm doing is I'm using the Pentart two-part fine line crackle, and this is part 1, and you can see it kind of looks like Elmer's glue, and I am going to go over all of these one time. Now you will see that in a couple of these that the glue is not attaching that well, and I have to go back over it, and that is because we put a clear coat or 2 clear coats on these. The reason that we put the clear coats on these is because on transfers, some people have had trouble if they use the 2-part crackle, that the transfer itself actually cracks if you use the Pentart fine line crackle. I have not had that happen. But the reason I put the clear coat on is to prevent that from happening, because basically what happens is then what actually cracks isn't the transfer, but the top coat, the two layers of top coat we put on. That cracks so that your transfer doesn't. It kind of protects your transfer. So anyway, that is why we did that, and that is why it is having a hard time sticking a little bit to that top of those brooches, because it's a little bit slick. But that's okay. I just go back over it a little bit. I let one coat dry, and then I put wherever it didn't stick, I just go back over it. So after part 1 is completely dry, and you'll know when it's dry when it's completely transparent, you want to go over it with part 2. And that's what I'm doing now. And you don't want it real drippy. This is a lot thinner than the part 1, so you have to be careful for drips. Now this is important. You want to always make sure that you put enough of part 2 on, a thick enough layer that it will crack, but not so thick that it drips or gums up. So you just kind of have to practice. This would be a really good project to practice on. A lot of different little pieces. Anyway, so I will go over these just one time. You don't want to drag your brush back over it. And you want to be using a clean new brush, not one that you did part 1 on and then you do part 2 separately. Now, I always use my heat gun on part 2. You definitely want to keep your heat gun moving and keep it far enough away that you do not bubble your part 2 or blister it. And just keep that heat gun moving. And I find that I get way more crackle with the heat gun on part 2. Part 1 I prefer to let dry on its own. I do use my heat gun occasionally, but I really prefer to let it dry on its own. Part 2 I tend to like my heat gun. Now what I'm using is I am using Pentart antique paste, and the antique paste is in antique gold. It is absolutely gorgeous. Now the antique paste is different than the antique wax. The antique paste is thinner and it goes in those little fine cracks a lot better. You see how it's a little bit more watery when it goes on there? It isn't a wax or a paste, but it's thinner. And I use a stencil brush and I go in kind of a circular motion and I work those a little, I work that antique gold antique paste in. It comes in several different colors, but the antique paste is what I'm using here, and the antique wax is just a little thicker and it leaves more residue on top, whereas the antique paste just really stays in those cracks, and it just allows you to wipe it back a lot better. See how I'm wiping it back? Now, you cannot use a wipe to wipe it back. No water can touch this product. You have to only use solvent-based products at this time. No water-based products can touch it. And you cannot use a wet wipe or it will absolutely gum it up and ruin it. So I am going to, after I get that crackle worked in there, I take just a shop towel and I really buff it up. It gets really shiny and it gets all in those very pretty little fine cracks. To me, it looks like just old porcelain or something. And I love it with the gold for Christmas time. There's also a brass and I think even silver. There's just a lot. There's white. The white is fantastic on a dark background. I should have probably done a couple in white for you to see, but the white is, oh, it's absolutely gorgeous on a dark background. Like right here, we could have done the white on that, and it would look so beautiful. I'll have to remember to do that to show you guys how that looks. In any case, this is how they look. I wanted you to see. My camera is not focusing all that great. You will see them closer in a little bit, but the crackle is gorgeous. A lot of times, too, when you think you don't have any crackle, it's because the fine line crackle is so fine, it's hard to see it with the naked eye. So I'm going to buff it one more time and make sure that I've got all of that antique paste off of the top. I just want it in the cracks. And now I am taking the Pentart varnish, and this is a solvent-based varnish. It's a clear, and this is the one that has a tint to it, which I love. There's also one that is crystal clear that is a gloss and also a matte. So you can have any kind of finish that you want. But I like this. It has a little bit of a tint to it. It makes it, you can barely see it. But if you're looking for a vintage look, this is a good one to have. Of course, you can use a clear. Now this stuff takes several hours to dry. I just leave mine overnight. It's not a water-based product, so it does take longer. So you just have to be patient. You don't want to be touching it afterwards because it'll leave like fingerprints on it. And so I go over that and I just let it dry completely. And that's pretty much it, because I had already put the magnets on the back, and that's all we have to do to these. And I think these would be a great gift to give somebody. Of course, like I said, you could put a bail on the back, just put some super glue and put a little jewelry bail on it and use them as ornaments. Anyway, I hope you like them, and you can get a closer look now. Project number 10, this is our last one, and this is a tray that I thrifted. I purchased this at my thrift store when it was 90% off. I only go shopping at my thrift store when it's 90 or 70% off because I have so much stuff that I need to get through. It has to be a really good deal. I am cleaning it off with alcohol just to make sure I get any grease or grime or anything else that is on there that shouldn't be on there. I usually always use alcohol to clean things. And then I'm going to try and get this sticker off. I use my heat gun to loosen it up. That works really well. And I get that sticker off, and then I get the other sticker off, and I just put some alcohol on it, clean it up, get ready to go. Now what I'm doing is I am just taking my glue that has, it's just a super glue that has an activator, and I'm taking a few drops on each side to kind of force these corners back together, just to try and make it a little sturdier. And now what I'm doing is I'm going over this with one coat of paint couture, a flat top coat. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to seal this wood just because I don't know if any oils or tannins or anything are going to bleed through. And I'm going to be using a light color, and whenever you're using a light color, you want to make sure that you seal your wood first. So I go over that and just let that dry completely. Of course, I do the back as well. So now what I'm doing is I am using Alchemy by Fusion, which is their chalk style paint. It does not have a primer or a top coat in it, but it is an exceptional chalk paint, guys. It really, really is. It is not meant to be like the Fusion paint that has the primer and the top coat. It is meant for you to be able to distress easily, for you to put inlays in, etc. And we're going to be putting an inlay on this. So I am going to go over this with one coat first. I'm going to let that dry completely. It's very important that if you're doing an inlay that you let each layer dry completely, otherwise it will pull up multiple layers. So I am going to go ahead and put 2 coats only on this. It probably could take 3 coats, but I don't care if it has perfect coverage, because what I'm going to be doing is giving it a very distressed look. So I'm going to go over this. This is the second coat. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and put a coat in the middle of this tray, a fresh coat, after I let the first coat completely dry. And I am going to be taking an inlay to put in here. And this inlay is called 12th Night. And this is from the new release. And this is a vintage Victorian Santa. And I am spraying the paint side of the inlay. Now my paint is still wet. I'm going to place it in my wet paint, position it where I want it. You do have time to move it around as long as you haven't pressed it into the paint. And then I'm going to take my rag, and it's damp, and I'm going to just go over the whole thing and make sure that that inlay is making really good contact with that paint. You let it completely dry, and after it is completely dry, then you will go and spritz it again, just like we did earlier. Let that water sit on it for a minute, and then you will go ahead and pull back the inlay. And you can see we had a little bit of a problem at the top. And what I'm going to do to fix that is I am going to take a little bit of my Sweet Pickins satin coat, and I'm going to go over that portion that did not transfer, just that portion, after I've dried the rest of the inlay. And I'm going to treat it just like it was the first time we put it down. I let it dry completely, spritz it with water, and then I pulled it off, and this is what we came up with. And honestly, guys, I should have left it alone at that point, but I tried to doctor it up a little more, and I actually think it looks better before I do that. It's too dark at that point, so then I try and lighten it up a little bit, and then that just kind of smudged it. It didn't look really good. So then I went back in with the dark, so back and forth, and I was really better off just leaving it like I did. So I added some more dark lines to try and make it all look like it blended. But I really got a pretty good impression the second time when I tried to fix it. And I should have just left it. But anyway, we are where we are. So I am going to make sure my inlay is completely dry. And what I'm going to do after that is I have a clear coat mix of just a satin clear coat. This is Sweet Pickins, and I take that with water and I mist it. I let it dry completely. That protects my inlay, and I don't have to worry about using a brush and smudging it. So now what I'm doing is I am taking my vintage texture stamp by IOD. This is a must-have stamp set. It has awesome different textures in it. I am taking the chippy paint one. I went all the way around the edges with it, as you can see, and now I'm taking the Crackle one, and I'm going to hit different spots on there. And what I do after I stamp it, and I'm using the IOD ink, is I take a wet wipe and I pounce on all of those little pieces that I stamped, or most of them. Some of them I leave the way they are, and that lightens it up a little and it makes it look more natural. I do that all over, and I think it gives it a very natural look. I did do a little sanding distressing on this also. I didn't show you that. But what I'm doing now is I am taking my clear wax, and this is by Fusion, and this is Tuscany clear wax. Their Tuscany clear wax has the most amazing smell to it, guys. I'm going to go over this whole thing with clear wax because I am going to be adding a dark wax, and I don't want it to be too much, and I can wipe it back if I put a clear wax. So now I'm putting Fusion aging wax, which is absolutely perfect for this. The color is perfect. And I go over it, and I'm going to wipe back a good portion of that, but I am going to leave more in the corners, more on top. I definitely want an old vintage look on this. So I'm going to wipe back quite a bit, and then I'm going to go in with a very fine brush, and I'm actually going to put some wax back in the creases and corners just to add some back. And now I have some twine, and I put hot glue to start it on that edge underneath so you couldn't see it, and I wrapped that twine around until it came all the way to the other edge. And I just did that to make this look a little bit more rustic and not so new. And I just thought it gave it more of a rustic feel to it. I'm definitely going for a vintage rustic look with this beautiful Victorian Santa. And y'all, make sure you hang on to your inlays. You can use them multiple times. The second time is usually a beautiful transfer, a little bit lighter, but just as wonderful, even if you messed up on it. And then I will be using this one again. You'll see it in another video, but it's just really beautiful, and especially with this color palette and the way it already looks distressed, using him multiple times is not a problem. So I put some glue underneath that end piece, and I shoved it in there to keep it in place, and I did that on both sides of the handle. And that's it, guys. I think it turned out really good, even with my mistake. And honestly, my mistake wasn't that bad after I corrected it. I just kind of overcorrected, but I still think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you think. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and a like, share it out. Also, if you happen to need any IOD, Fusion, Paint Couture, Pentart, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, JRV, Roycycle paper, or decoupage paper, you can get that on my website, rehatchdesigns.com. The link will be in the description. $50 free shipping and $9 flat rate shipping after that. And we just restocked on a whole bunch of stuff, guys. I know we've been running out. Y'all have been buying up your stuff to make all your Christmas crafts, and I much appreciate it. But we have just restocked a bunch of things. If it's not up tonight, if all of it's not up tonight, it'll be up tomorrow for sure. Hopefully it'll be up by the time you see this. In any case, guys, I hope to get another video out on Saturday, and try and keep my Saturday Wednesday schedule. So please keep looking for me on Saturdays and Wednesdays. And if you got any value out of this, I really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up, share it out, and definitely, if you have not subscribed, please do. And I will see you again on Saturday. You guys take care. Bye-bye.